Thank you, everyone, for joining today's webcast on Office 365 and SharePoint Online. This is the second on a 5-part series of webcasts that we're doing on Office 365. Today's topic is going to be SharePoint Online. And the subtitle I decided to use for this, The Future of Online Productivity. And the reason why I chose that subtitle is because this is really going to revolutionize the way businesses, companies collaborate online with Office 365 and SharePoint Online. As Jasmina mentioned, I'm Jaime Velez. I'm the CEO and founder of WEBFORCE1. WEBFORCE1, it's a small business technology consulting company based out of Chicago, and we focus on providing cloud solutions for small businesses. I've also included my Twitter handle here. It's SP_Jamie in case you would like to follow me if you want to have any specific questions after the webcast that I wasn't able to answer for you. Also, if anybody's interested in receiving a copy of the presentation, I would post it on my I would post a tweet on this later on, and I usually post it on SlideShare. If you're not familiar with SlideShare, it's just a place where we can upload our PowerPoints online. So I'd like to, before I get started with the presentation, the first thing I'd like to do is mention a quick legal disclaimer. Office 365 is a product of Microsoft. It's not a product of WebForce1. WebForce1 is, however, a Microsoft partner, and we are authorized to sell and provide Office 365 solutions. So I just wanted to quickly give this quick legal disclaimer, and the views that you'll see in today's webcast are the views of WebForce1 and not necessarily the views of O'Reilly Media or Microsoft. So let's quickly go over the agenda for today's session. The first thing I'd like to do is give you an overview of Office 365, a really quick overview. If you missed my first webcast, I went into a little more general discussion of what Office 365 is, and I discussed the 4 different components of Office 365. Today's webcast is really going to focus on SharePoint Online. So I'm going to give you a quick description and definition of what SharePoint Online is, in case you're not familiar with SharePoint. Then after that, I'm going to give you a quick rundown of the features by plan. By plan, I mean Office 365 comes in different flavors. So it comes there's a P plan for professionals and small business, and there are several E plans for enterprises, which I will describe in more detail in a few minutes. One of the most common questions I get from customers that are looking at Office 365 and SharePoint Online for the first time, it's what kind of administrative experience do they get? So what I decided to do in this webcast, I'm going to give you I'd like to give you some screenshots and explain how the administrative experience changes a little bit when you move from a SharePoint on-premise environment to a SharePoint Online environment. And then I'd like to give you a demo of one of the new features of SharePoint Online, and that's the public-facing website. So if you're not aware already, with Office 365, you can also host your public-facing website. This is really intended for small, medium-sized businesses. It's not really intended for a website that's going to have thousands and thousands of hits a day. I'll show you, during the demo, I'll show you how you can quickly edit and add content to your website. But again, I just want to stress that this public-facing website that's included in Office 365, it's a lightweight website, and it's used particularly for small and mid-sized businesses. After that demo, what I'd like to do is discuss different customization options that are available in Office 365, particularly on SharePoint Online. So there's 3 different strategies that you could use for applying customizations, and I'll explain those. And then I want to talk about the building blocks that you can use to build pretty compelling online collaborative solutions. So SharePoint, many times we've used the reference SharePoint is like a Swiss Army knife. It really is a multi-purpose tool that allows you to build quickly. That allows you to quickly build applications without requiring to have a developer on staff. So I'm going to talk about the different building blocks, and then I'm going to show you some sample solutions. I'm going to do some screen sharing. As Jasmina mentioned in the beginning of the call, we were having some issues with the screen sharing, so hopefully that would work out pretty well. If not, I might be able to show you some screenshots. But I'm saving it for the end of the call, just in case we have any technical difficulties. But in either case, what I'd like to do at the end of the call is open it up for Q&A. During the first webcast, we had a lot of interest in a lot of great questions, so hopefully we can answer some of your more additional questions that you'll have today on SharePoint Online. Okay, great. So let's move on to the next slide. So quickly, Office 365 is Microsoft's communication and collaboration products hosted online. So you get Exchange Online, SharePoint Online, and Lync Online, as well as Office Professional Plus, all hosted in a single platform. So the Office Professional Plus, you actually, depending on the plan that you choose, you can actually download the full Office client, so you can install it in your desktop, and then you just pay on a subscription pay-as-you-go service. But you also get Office Web Apps. And Office Web Apps, it's actually going to be my next webcast in October. And during that webcast, I'm actually going to explain to you how you can actually co-author documents. You can actually collaborate online real-time with multiple users on a document that's actually being presented through your browser. Exchange Online, it's basically our Microsoft's email server hosted on the cloud, so you get a 25-gig mailbox. You get antivirus, anti-spam. And then Lync Online is your instant messaging audio-video conferencing solution. And there's also going to be another webcast on that in the November timeframe. But this presentation, like I said, it's really going to focus on SharePoint Online. And what I'd like to do is kind of my biggest goal for this presentation is to show to you what you can and you cannot do on SharePoint Online. There's certain functionality and there's certain features that are not available online. But for the most part, everything that you can do in an on-premise environment, it's available with the SharePoint Online system. And then lastly, the biggest benefit of Office 365 is that you can actually manage all these services from a single platform. So you have a single interface to administer all these services. And when I go over the SharePoint administrative experience, I'm going to show you some screenshots of what that single interface experience looks like. Okay, great. So let's move on to the next slide. So what is SharePoint? So this is what I call my SharePoint in 2-minute slide. That's almost like an impossible task to describe SharePoint in 2 minutes, but I'm going to do my best. So before I start discussing SharePoint Online, I want to discuss what SharePoint 2010 is. So SharePoint 2010 was released by Microsoft in late 2009. It was a successor to SharePoint 2007. And this slide pretty much summarizes the capabilities, the main capabilities of SharePoint 2010. So if we break it down into the 6 different components, you have sites. And sites, it's basically the building blocks that allows you to build your intranet sites, your team sites, your extranet sites, departmental sites. So you basically can create your own websites depending for the particular function that you like to use it for. Then you have communities, and communities is basically the ability to be able to share information and tag information with some of your colleagues. In SharePoint 2010, you have a My Site, which is a special SharePoint template. And the My Site, it's a great way. Some people refer to it as the Facebook for the enterprise. It's not quite like Facebook, but it's similar to Facebook in the sense that you can update your statuses and you can share with your colleagues what you're currently working on. Then you also have content management. And content management refers to document management, web content management. It's also records management. In SharePoint Online, there's some limitations to Record Center, and I'll explain that in a few minutes. The other capability is search. And in my opinion, search is probably one of the most underutilized capabilities of SharePoint. Search gives you the ability to index all your documents and all your sites, and you can, from a single search interface, you can find your information quickly. So instead of having to go through different file shares or open up emails, you can scroll your different content sources, and you can have a single unified search experience through SharePoint. The next capability is Insights. And Insights refers to business intelligence, dashboards, KPIs, which are key performance indicators. So with the multiple web parts available, for example, Excel web parts, you can actually build some pretty compelling dashboards that will give you insight into your business, either your financials or some of the other business metrics that you want to be able to display through your SharePoint portal. And then lastly, this is new capability. Well, it's not new, but it's composites. And what composites really are, it's the ability to take all those different building blocks and create solutions. So you can take certain web parts and connect them to other web parts, and you can build a pretty dynamic solution using SharePoint and all its functionality. So that's SharePoint in 2 minutes. I probably left you with more questions than answers, but the idea is that there's so much you can do with SharePoint. There's a lot of functionality, and it's enough to keep you busy for a while. I've been working with SharePoint for the last 8 years, and one thing I learned about SharePoint is that the more I learn, the more I realize how much I don't know about SharePoint. So it's a really, really compelling solution. It's a really great platform for building online, for building collaborative solutions. So that's SharePoint in 2 minutes. I think I probably went a little over 2 minutes. I might have to change my slide to SharePoint in 5 minutes. So let's see now what SharePoint Online is. So basically, SharePoint Online, it's part of the Office 365 service, and it's actually one of the 4 components. So Office, and it's SharePoint hosted on the cloud. The biggest benefit to you is that you don't need to worry about hardware. There's no need to deploy servers. You only subscribe to the service. So Microsoft hosts all the servers, and they do all the maintenance and all the monitoring and all the updates are their data centers. And all you really have to do is connect, subscribe, and you have instant access to your SharePoint sites. So again, there's no need to deploy servers. So that's probably one of the biggest benefits of going to SharePoint Online. As I mentioned, it's sold as a subscription service, and it's sold either directly through Microsoft, or you can actually go through one of your partners. If you already have a relationship with a Microsoft partner, they can, and if they're authorized, if they're an authorized Microsoft Online Services partner, you can actually buy the service directly through them. Like I mentioned earlier, that one of the benefits is that the software is always up to date. And if you notice, it's not called SharePoint 2010 Online. It's called SharePoint Online. And the reason why, it's because when the next version of SharePoint comes out, you don't need to worry about upgrades. The upgrades are going to happen automatically at the Microsoft data centers. And the idea is as updates and patches are applied, it's seamless to you. So you always have the latest and greatest software application. You don't have to worry about patching, so you don't have to worry about service packs. You don't have to worry about installing any of the latest security updates. That's all taken care of for you. Another benefit to SharePoint Online is that it's financially backed by different SLAs, by Microsoft SLAs. What that means, the service level agreements, what that means is the service is down for more than 99.9% of the time. Microsoft will reimburse you for any outages that the system had suffered. So basically, Microsoft SharePoint Online, it's SharePoint without all the hassle. It's SharePoint without all the overhead, without all the maintenance. You just subscribe to the service and you have access to your SharePoint sites, and you don't have to worry about maintaining your servers. So the illustration I like to put here is Microsoft Online Services plus partners equals shiny, happy people. And those shiny, happy people could be your customers, could be your IT staff. It's because everybody really benefits from this. So it's a new way of consuming the service without actually having to incur all the costs of deploying servers and even hiring staff to maintain your servers. Okay, great. So let's move on to the next slide. And one more thing I wanted to include here is that one of the other benefits of SharePoint Online is that since it's a hosted solution, you have access to it from anywhere. And if you have a Windows Phone 7, you'll notice that the Windows Phone 7 already has a built-in integration with Office 365. So you can actually have access to your SharePoint documents through your Windows Phone 7. You can actually access it from other devices as well. The difference is the Windows Phone 7, it already has an instant connection, so you can just plug in your SharePoint Online server one time, and it will save it. It will save your credentials. So you can just simply go to the Office Hub, and on the Office Hub, you can have access to your SharePoint documents. I included a link here that you can see later, so if you would like to learn more about how Office 365 and Windows 7 integrates, you can click this link. You can access a YouTube video that gives you a little more in-depth demo on the integration between Office 365 and Windows Phone 7. Okay, what I would like to do now is talk about the different features, the different SharePoint features that are available through each plan. I mentioned earlier that Office 365 comes in different versions, different flavors. So the first plan that's available is the P1 plan. And the P1 plan is the most basic version of the service, and it's basically for professionals and small businesses. It's only $6 per user per month, and what that does is it gives you access to email through Outlook. It gives you access to Lync through conference for video and audio conferencing. And it also gives you SharePoint. But with SharePoint, you get what you get with SharePoint is a single single site collection. And what I mean by that is you only have one team site. You can create multiple sub-sites, but you can only manage one site collection in SharePoint. If you're familiar with SharePoint and you know and you're familiar with creating multiple site collections, the biggest thing you need to remember with the P1 plan is that you only get one site collection. Another thing that's noteworthy when you're trying to decide which version is better for you, on the P1 plan, the SharePoint sites are not using HTTPS, are not using secure socket layers. So basically what that means is they're not fully encrypted. So if you're really concerned about security and privacy, you probably don't want to purchase the P1 plan for SharePoint. It's a great solution if you want to use it mainly for a public-facing website, and I'll show you why in a few minutes when I give you the demo for the public-facing website. Okay, give me a minute here while I advance to the next slide. Okay, so when you log into the P1 plan, this is what the administrative interface looks like. You have access to Outlook, Lync, and then you have access to your team site. And then you can create, using Office web apps, you can create Word, Excel, PowerPoint, or OneNote documents that are hosted on the cloud. As you can see in the bottom, you also have access to your public website. And our website, which is the one I'm going to demo in a few minutes, WebForce1.net, is actually hosted on Office 365. So let me go ahead and move on to the next slide, because the next slide, it's going to be a little busy, and I don't intend to go through every single item here, but I did want to point out the biggest difference between the P plan and E plan. It's that, like I said, you only get one site collection. Your storage is 10 gigabytes, and you're limited to 10 gigabytes. So if you think you're going to exceed 10 gigabytes in the future, you probably want to consider going to the enterprise plans. The enterprise plans go up to 5 terabytes. So that's going to be one of your deciding factors for which plan you want to go with. One of the improvements on the SharePoint Online over the SharePoint on-premise version is the file upload size. It's by default is 250 megabytes. If you have SharePoint on-premise, you can change that. The administrator has access to change that. But the file upload size by default on SharePoint 2010 is actually 50 megabytes. So this is actually an improvement. So you can actually upload larger size files to your SharePoint sites. Okay. So with the P1 plan, you still have access to Access, so you can still use Access services on the P1 plan. You have access to Excel services, InfoPath, and this is some of the enterprise features that are available in SharePoint 2010. These features were not available in the past when SharePoint Online was based on the 2007 environment, but they're available now. And you'll be able to create some really compelling solutions using Access, InfoPath, and Excel services using SharePoint Online. SharePoint Online supports several browsers. It supports Firefox, Safari, and IE, Internet Explorer. And like I mentioned earlier, it also supports several different type of mobile devices. So I'm going to have this slide available. So I'm sure that you probably have a lot of questions based on this slide. So I'm going to have this available later to my Twitter handle. I'm also going to post it on my website as well. So if you'd like to download this later for references, I'll make sure I have that available for you. Okay, now that was the P plan. And now I would like to discuss the enterprise plans and the K plans. And the K plans are the Kiosk plan. Kiosk is a concept that Microsoft introduced to identify office work, or not office workers, but identify workers that are not particularly tied down to a desk, or somebody that's always on the road, or it could be somebody that goes from location to location, doesn't have a specific workstation. So a kiosk worker can log into any station. They log into their portal, to the Office 365 portal, and they can access their email, and they can also access SharePoint. The difference between the E plans and the K plans is that K plans are read-only access for SharePoint. But then they have, through Outlook Web Access, they can send, receive emails. It's very similar to the Outlook Rich Client experience, but it's hosted online. I'm not going to go into the different type of plans. What I'd like to point out here is that if you want to use the Access services, Excel, and Visio services, that's going to require you to sign up for the E2 plan. So if you sign up for the Enterprise 1 plan, you still get SharePoint, but you don't have access to some of the enterprise features such as Access, Visio, and Excel services. Again, this is a breakdown of all the features that you find in the E-plan. This is similar to the one I showed you before. The biggest difference here, and I highlighted some of those items there, is that the first thing is you get more storage. You can expand up to 5 terabytes. The other thing is that you also, with the E-plans, you also have My Sites. And My Sites, like I mentioned earlier, are a special type of SharePoint site that are used for your own personal use. So this is sites where you can store your own private documents, but you can also share certain documents with some of your colleagues. Okay, 1 second here. I'm trying to refresh my slides. Okay, and again, I'll have this slide available so you can download this later for reference. Okay, so some of the functionality that's not included in SharePoint Online, and this will be some of the reasons why you would decide to go to a SharePoint on-premise installation instead of going to online. You don't have access to certain things like Record Center. So Record Center is a special site template that you can install that allows you to manage your compliance, manage your different. So once you declare a document of record, that record has a certain life cycle. It could live out 7 years, depending on how you configure it. The Record Center is not available in SharePoint Online. Information rights management, which is a Microsoft technology that allows you to protect documents or disallow users from printing or saving or sharing documents, that's not included with SharePoint Online. You can integrate that with SharePoint on-premises, but not with SharePoint Online. Now, on the business intelligence and composite application side, the biggest things that are missing are performance point services. Performance points it's another tool that allows you to build dashboards and it allows you to create analytical reports. That's not included with SharePoint Online. And then BCS, Business Connectivity Services, it's actually it's actually a functionality of SharePoint that allows you to consume content from other sources. So you can connect to a SQL and Oracle database, and you can actually pull data into SharePoint, into a SharePoint list, and then you can take that data and you can search on it, or you can use that data and use it as columns or metadata for other SharePoint lists and libraries. Another main functionality that's missing in SharePoint Online is FAST. The FAST search technology. So FAST, if you're familiar with FAST, FAST was an acquisition by Microsoft a few years ago, and what it gives you some additional enterprise search capabilities that right now you can only implement in SharePoint on-premise. There's a possibility that they would add this in the future to SharePoint Online. And one thing I wanted to note is that because it's not available today in SharePoint Online, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's not going to be available in the future. There's a possibility that Microsoft could update their services to include some of this functionality. A lot of this functionality is not available, and it's because of technical issues. In other words, like the BCS is not what Microsoft calls multi-tenant aware, so there's no way to separate those services for all the different tenants of SharePoint Online. But like I said, there's nothing that's saying that in the future this functionality will not be available in SharePoint Online. But if you are considering going to SharePoint Online, this is probably one of your most important deciding factors. If you need any of the services or any of these features, you might want to either consider doing a hybrid scenario where you have some sites on-premise and you have some sites online, or you might just want to implement completely on-premise into these functionalities available. Okay, I'm going to advance to the next slide now. And what I'd like to do now is kind of walk you through the administrative experience. If anybody on the call is already familiar with administering SharePoint for an on-premise environment, you're probably familiar with this screen. This is the central administration screen. And this is where you would go for your day-to-day SharePoint management function application task. So if you wanted to create a new website, a new web app, or if you wanted to create a new site collection, this is where you would normally go. The difference with the SharePoint Online is that you don't have access to this anymore. You get a different interface. The reason why is because this is no longer, the forms are no longer managed by you. They're managed by Microsoft. And what you have access to is the site collection settings. So let me go ahead and advance to the next slide. Okay, so what you see now, it's the new Office 365 portal. Okay, there it is. What you see now is the new Office 365 portal. administrative console, and here is where you can actually create new SharePoint sites. If you notice, there's a section for Lync Online, I highlighted this section for SharePoint, and if you were to click on the Manage link there, then it launches a different portal. And this is only for the E plans. So on the P plan, you don't see this. On the E plans, you can create multiple site collections. You can also manage InfoPath, so you can have forms online. And you can also manage your user profiles. User profiles is part of the My Sites. This is where you can actually incorporate some of your information, some of your user information into their profile, into their My Sites. And then lastly, you can also manage the term store. Term store, it's a way that Microsoft describes a taxonomy that you use for the site. So the term store allows you to put in certain keywords or certain tags, different keywords that you want to use when you tag documents on your SharePoint sites. Okay, one moment. I'm going to advance to the next slide now. Okay, so that was the console for the E plans. Now what I'd like to show you is the console for the P plan, for the Small Business and Professionals plan. The biggest thing you notice here is that they don't refer to it as SharePoint. They only refer to it as team sites. And the reason why is because you only have one site. So when you come to this side here, the only thing you can do is you can view your site, but you don't have the same options like you did before on the E plan. You can change permissions, you can add users, and you can add sites, but this is sub-sites. So you can add sites and templates to your site. So it's a more streamlined version of than the E plan. It's a very simplified version of the console. And if you want to actually manage your team site, what it's going to do is actually going to take you to the site settings page. So if you're familiar with SharePoint on-premise, the only thing you can manage on the P plan is everything that you see on the site settings, which you should be able to see on the screen right now. Okay, so again, you can manage user permissions. And you also have certain control over the look and feel of the site. You can change some of the navigation, and you can change some of the site themes. And the site themes is what allows you to get a different look and feel for the site, different color scheme for the site. Okay, so that's the administrative console for the E plans and the P plan. And what I like to do now is I like to demo how you can actually edit your public-facing site. So with SharePoint Online, with all the plans, with the E plans and the P plans, you can actually create your own public-facing site. You're limited to one public-facing site for each plan for each plan that you sign up for. So our own website, WebForce1, is actually hosted on Office 365. And what I like to do is I like to show you, give you a quick demo on how I can easily go ahead and modify the website. And it doesn't require a web designer. It doesn't require any special technical skills. So what I like to do now is I'm going to do some screen sharing. So 1 second here. Let me go ahead and start this. Okay, just one moment. I'm going to log into my portal. Try and see. For some reason, my screen sharing is not working. So I might have to. We were having some issues earlier today with the screen sharing. Let me see. Let me try one more thing here. 1 second.
Okay, Jamie, when you're doing the screen share and you click on that tab that says screen share, there's a couple names that appear. Are you clicking on the one in the middle and then the launch screen share?
Yep, let me try that again.
Okay.
Okay, doesn't seem to be working for me, so I'm going to go ahead and skip the section right now. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to launch the administrative console and I wanted to edit my website. Let me try one more thing before I give up here. 1 second. Okay, so in a few seconds here, what you should be able to see is my administrative console for my P1 plan. So the website that I'm actually hosting on Office 365, it's on the P1 plan. And let me just scroll down. Let me make the screen a little bigger. Okay, so if you notice here, I can actually go to my admin section. And as soon as this screen refreshes, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to edit the website. Can you see it now, Jasmina?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, perfect. Excellent. Okay, so it appears that you don't get the full screen effect, but in a few seconds you should be able to see the SharePoint library that is actually hosting all the different pages for my public-facing website. So this is all the different pages. So basically this is a SharePoint document library. It's a special document library. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to modify the home page here. So I'm just going to copy and paste some content that I wanted to include in my website. So for instance, on the front page of the website, you notice all the content, it's in these little red boxes. Those are called web part zones. So what I want to do is I actually want to modify the Webcast section here. And all I'm going to do is I'm simply going to copy and paste from a Word document where I previously put the information in. Okay, so now I should have the latest information here. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to publish the site. So now if I look at the new site, it automatically updated the information for me. So now the webcast, now you get information for the upcoming webcast on October 13th. So it was real simple. It was really easy. All I had to do was launch the Office 365 portal administration page, edit the website, launch the SharePoint document library, open up the page, and all I had to do was copy and paste some content, and I was able to publish it immediately. So it's a pretty simple interface. It's a great, like I said before, it's a great solution for small, medium-sized businesses that just want to be able to have a quick and simple and effective website up there. I'm going to go ahead and stop the screen sharing right now. I'm going to return to the slides. Okay, and what I like to do now is I like to spend a few minutes and just talk about the different customization options that are available for SharePoint Online. Let me give it a few seconds here for the screen to refresh. Okay, so with Office 365, there's 3 different ways you can customize SharePoint Online. The first way is to the browser. For the public-facing site, you just saw an example of how easily that could be done. There's also certain elements that you can change on the page. You can change the theme. You can upload your own logo to any SharePoint site, and that's all done through the browser or out of the box. It doesn't require any special tools. You can do everything just through the site settings. The second option is you can use SharePoint Designer. And SharePoint Designer is a free product that's available through Microsoft. It's used specifically to enhance the content of SharePoint sites. You can also use it to create workflows or business processes that could be published to any SharePoint document library or any SharePoint list. And then the third way you can customize your SharePoint Online site is via Visual Studio. And this does require some development skills. This requires you to have some .NET knowledge. But the biggest thing that you need to remember is that you can only deploy sandbox solutions in SharePoint Online. And what I mean by sandbox solutions, these are a different type of solution that are only implemented at the site collection level. If anybody on the call is accustomed to doing development on SharePoint on-premise environment, you would know that when you deploy a solution, you can deploy it to the entire farm, meaning that every SharePoint site collection would get those solutions. That's not permitted on SharePoint Online. The reason why is because it's a multi-tenant environment, but they do allow you to create solutions that are specific to your site collection. If you want to learn more about how to customize SharePoint sites using any of those methods, what I would like to do is I'd like to encourage you to visit this link here. And this is the SharePoint Online for Office 365 Developers Guide, and it gives you all the guidance and all the information that you need to be able to create some solutions that are, for instance, if the out-of-the-box web parts or the out-of-the-box solutions do not suffice or do not meet your business needs, you can definitely create something on SharePoint Designer, or you can create your own sandbox solutions using Visual Studio. Okay, I'm going to advance to the next slide. So what I wanted to demonstrate, the main message I'm trying to give you on this webcast is that you can build several solutions in SharePoint Online, and what some people in the industry call no-code solutions. And this is using some of the building blocks, some of the web parts, some of the functionality that's available through SharePoint Online. This is just an example of some of the solutions that you can create. And it's really, you're only limited to your imagination. You can create as many solutions as you can imagine on SharePoint Online. And again, if you don't find any web parts out of the box, chances are somebody has probably already developed a custom web part. If you can take that custom web part and package it as a sandbox solution, you can definitely use that web part on a SharePoint Online site. Okay, what I'd like to do now is kind of wrap it up. I want to make sure I leave enough time for questions at the end. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to give you a summary of why you would choose to go with SharePoint Online. And the biggest benefit is really the overhead. You don't have to deal with servers. You don't have to deal with monitoring, with patches. You don't have to deal with having to maintain all those different servers that runs all those different services. So not just SharePoint, but you're talking about Exchange Online, which in itself requires one or more servers. Lync Online, so if you were to deploy that on-premise, you would also have to require a separate Lync server for that as well. So you don't need to deal with that. It reduces your cost because you only pay a low subscription fee per user per month. It consolidates all your services, so you take Exchange, Lync, SharePoint, Office Professional Plus all in a single interface on a single platform that's easy to manage by one person instead of multiple people. And it provides it as software as a service, which is really the trend right now. Everything that you hear nowadays is all about the cloud. So Microsoft took some of their best collaboration and communication servers and they put them on the cloud for you. Less IT management, I already mentioned that. But really the bottom line is that it allows you to become more productive. So you can do a lot more with less. And so increased productivity is definitely one of the biggest benefits of why you would want to choose SharePoint Online. There was recently an article on PC World that talks about how Office 365 virtually pays for itself. They even mentioned that it's a no-brainer for small businesses. This is a really great article. I'm going to put the link up here so you can copy it. Again, the slides will be available later for download, so you can read that article at your own time. So that's pretty much wraps up why SharePoint Online is a compelling solution for you. What I also wanted to do is I wanted to give you some additional resources. The best place to learn more about Office 365 and SharePoint Online is through the Microsoft site, office365.com. I also included some links for where you can learn more about the administration of SharePoint. You can learn more about development guidance for SharePoint, and also an end-user reference. But one thing I'd like to mention is I heard this once at a SharePoint conference, and I would like to give credit to whoever said this because it's probably one of the best quotes I've heard about SharePoint. The biggest feature that you find in SharePoint is its community. And the reason why I say that is because you're not going to find a more vibrant community than the SharePoint community, especially on Twitter. If you have any questions whatsoever about SharePoint, you can go ahead and tweet your questions on Twitter and just put the hashtag SharePoint or SharePoint Online or Office 365, and you would almost certainly within minutes receive a response from somebody. There's also several SharePoint user groups. There's several SharePoint conferences throughout the country. There's the SharePoint Saturdays organization that it's normally free for attendees that you can learn more about SharePoint. But there's really a vast amount of information out there on SharePoint that the community is willing to share with you. Okay, so just another quick announcement. So the next webcast I'm going to be doing is going to be on Office web apps. And during this webcast, what I'd like to do is give you a demo of how you can have real-time co-authoring scenarios with different users in your organization, which is a new way that people are going to be able to work and collaborate on Office documents online. And that's going to be in October. That's going to be October 13. If you'd like to register for that webcast, you can just simply go to O'Reilly.com/webcast. And also there's some additional webcasts available, which I'll give you that information shortly. But what I'd like to do now is I'd like to pass it over to Jasmina and then start answering some of your questions that you may have on SharePoint Online.
Okie dokie. That was wonderful, Jimmy, by the way. And we do have quite a few questions that came in. Let's take a look here and get them in the order that they came in. And you may have seen some of these. I don't know, I already covered it in the material, but we'll just go forward here. Bill says, can I have an Internet-facing Office 365 site that using some sort of authentication for guests? Do I have to buy a license for each guest?
So the answer is, so the public-facing website currently doesn't have that functionality. You do, however, with the SharePoint Online, you can create a special site. If you have the e-plans, you can create a special site collection that's used for an extranet scenario. It's not Microsoft doesn't refer to it as an extranet, but it does gives you external access rights. On the P plan, the regular team site that you have, you can invite up to 50 people to share your site, external users. There's only one condition with that, and right now it's that those users have to have a Hotmail or Live ID account. In the future, they plan to enhance that and give you access to additional multiple authentication methods, but right now it's only through Hotmail and Live ID. So the answer is yes, you can do it through a separate site collection, but not on the public-facing site.
Okay, and Deborah has a question. She asks, what is the benefit of purchasing through Microsoft or a partner?
That's a great question. I don't know if there's particularly a benefit to just going directly to Microsoft. It's going to cost the same no matter whether you purchase through Microsoft or through the partner. It's exactly the same. The benefit of going with the partner is that you have the partner available for support. The partner does get a commission. They get a fee. But it's still the same price for the customer. So the partner has an incentive to help you out with your support. The partners give you added value by helping you with the migration and initial configuration. That's exactly what we do. WebForce1, we actually help small businesses deploy Office 365. So I wouldn't say there's particularly a benefit to going directly to Microsoft, but there's definitely a benefit of working with the partner.
Great, great. And as we go through the questions, I just want to remind folks that, if you do have a question for Jamie and what he's been talking to you about and showing you, please type that into the group chat and send it in while he's still with us so he can answer that. Let's see, the next one from Bill. I have BPOS now. Can I get migrated to Office 365 now? Have the migrations even started yet?
That's a great question. So BPOS, which is the predecessor, I probably should have mentioned on my presentation that BPOS is the predecessor of Office 365, and it's basically SharePoint Exchange but on the 2007 version. That migration is about to get started soon. The last thing I heard is that Microsoft was planning on starting that in September. I'm not sure if it has already started yet, but you will, Bill, or the person that asked that question, you'll be notified through your administrative console. And in fact, when you get that notification, what Microsoft is planning on doing is giving you the option of when would you like to be migrated. The plan is that all migrations for BPOS are going to be completed within 12 months, starting in September. So by September of next year, all BPOS customers should be fully migrated to Office 365. I have seen a few posts on the forums about this, and some customers don't want to wait that long if they haven't received the notification yet. So if you search BPOS transition on Office 365.community.com, community.office365.com, there's been quite a few posts about that, and I think I've even seen somebody post a suggestion on how you can migrate. It's not really an upgrade. I think the workaround is you would to create a new account, migrate your data. There's different ways of doing it, but the short answer is yes. Eventually, all BPOS customers will be upgraded to Office 365.
Great. And Dwayne would like to know, can you use Expression Web 4 instead of SharePoint Designer 2010 in order to create the public-facing website?
So I want to be careful when I answer the question. So I didn't say during the call that you can actually modify the public-facing website using SharePoint Designer. Microsoft doesn't support that. If you read the service description and I forgot to mention that too. So all the functionality that's available in SharePoint Online, it's all detailed out on what Microsoft calls the service description, and it's a pretty lengthy document. It pretty much details out everything that you can and you cannot do on SharePoint Online. It specifically says on that document that the public-facing website can only be edited through the user interface. But I have seen some people that can actually edit it using SharePoint Designer, but it's not specifically supported by Microsoft. So I don't think you'll be able to do it with Expression Designer. If you can, it's definitely not going to be a supported method by Microsoft.
Fantastic. And let's see, looks like one final question. This one's from Edwin, and probably other folks have this one too. Again, folks are wanting to know, Jamie, where can they download your slides?
Okay, so the easiest way, you should see my Twitter handle here. If you follow me or if you just want to, I'm actually going to post the slides on slideshare.net, and I'll do this right after the call, so if you wait just a few minutes after the call, I'll upload the PowerPoint deck to SlideShare, and then I'll give you a link on my Twitter handle. If you want to check out my website maybe later today or tomorrow, I'll have a link as well. I'll probably have a link to I know that this session is being recorded, and it's usually available about 24 to 48 hours afterwards, so I'll probably have a link to the recorded webcast as well.
Perfect. I'm not seeing any other questions. Did you want to leave the audience with any additional information, Jamie?
No, so I just have my contact information here, so if anybody has additional questions later on about Office 365. And then the last thing I wanted to do is just show up the schedule for the upcoming webcast. So like I mentioned earlier, Office Web Apps, that's going to happen October 13th, Exchange Online in November, and then in December I'm going to be going a little more into little deeper into Lync Online. Again, I just want to thank everybody for joining today's webcast, and hopefully this has been very helpful for you guys.
Well, thank you very much, Jamie, for that wonderful and informative presentation. We thank all the attendees that joined us today, and we hope you've benefited from the webcast. Again, you can see on the screen right now additional upcoming webcast dates that Jamie will be presenting. You don't want to miss it. Office 365 is getting bigger and more attention, so we want to make sure you have the latest information, and Jamie will provide that for you. We again thank everyone for joining today. Everyone, this will conclude the webcast. Goodbye.